So Kate Andre, you're the mom of 6, and what's the age range there?
13 to 9 months.
And you've been homeschooling now for quite a while. How long have you been homeschooling?
Yeah, since my oldest was 4.
Okay, wow.
So
when,
a little more than a decade.
Yeah, so when you're homeschooled, you have all kids in all different grades, all together, all kind of going through education all at once, right?
Yeah.
And so with COVID here and the new realities we're living in and school coming back around, a lot of families are maybe thinking about homeschooling for the first time than ever before. And it seems like you've become a little directory on this. You have families calling you all the time, right?
Yeah, so do a lot of my other friends who homeschool too. They've had a lot of calls with people just not being sure what their school districts are doing exactly, or I think a lot of people are afraid they'll get started and then be sent home again. So people are really weighing their options.
So homeschooling for a lot of families is a little bit mysterious. They don't know what it's about. They don't know how it goes. And so I want to kind of talk through with you what this looks like and help parents think through, is this something that we could conceivably do? So with homeschooling, let's just talk straightforward. What is it like? What do you do? When you're explaining it to a parent and they say, hey, what is this like for your family? How has it been for your family? What's the experience been like?
It definitely is a big difference, especially if you're used to having your kids in school somewhere else all day. I think one of the biggest surprises is that it takes a lot less time than a normal school day, just because kids are getting a lot more one-on-one. In a classroom, if everybody goes to the restroom or pencils need sharpened, that takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of parents are surprised that, with an young elementary kid in a couple hours, they can have done what they need to for the day.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the bigger surprises. But really, it is a different way of doing your life, in the same way that school fits into certain hours when your kids are gone. Even if parents are doing homework later in the day, when you're home, you can kind of break it up. You don't have to be done at 3 or start at 8. So there's a lot more flexibility than there is when you send your kids somewhere. So I think people are afraid they're thinking between those hours I have to fit in everything they do during a school day at school in a building, but it's very different. It's a lot more relaxed. There's a lot of flexibility. For one of our favorite things about homeschooling is that our children have been able to accelerate through things that they love. So, complete a math book. I have one son that's done that, and we've just moved ahead. He's been able to keep up at a higher rate with that. And also, when you have a child who the concept's just not sticking yet, you have the freedom to slow down until they've mastered it. And I think it's a lot less pressure. It's scary in the beginning because it's so unknown. But once you get in the groove and you've got, an idea of what times of day work well for you to work with your children and what things they can do independently, there's actually a lot of flexibility in your schedule and a lot less pressure.
So let's talk about the curriculum side of this, right? So is all homeschool curriculum, when you think about when I was in public school, for example, you had your math class, you had your social studies class, English class, science, maybe gym. In your individual days, is home education, is it the same kind of breakout like that, or how do you kind of take your kid through curriculum in a school year?
A lot of the curriculums are set up for like a 36-week breakdown. So I really like, especially for people who are just getting started, scripted curriculums. So there's not a lot of extra prep for the parent, but where you can easily follow along. And a lot of them are broken down that way into 36 weeks. Some people choose to do, I would say most people do math and writing and English reading every day. But sometimes, you break out your science and history and some other things. You might do a big project one day. You have that. It's another place where you have freedom to make it work for your schedule. And that's something we've done to balance it with our kids. Sometimes there are things my husband wants to do with the kids, like they built a sundial. And he wanted to do that in the evening, and it was great. And you can have the freedom to do that. So you can move things around, which is something I really like. But you're gonna have those same core subjects, but you can choose. I think one of the differences is that you can look at what works best for your child, how best they learn. And also, being in 3rd grade doesn't mean you have to be on level 3 of each of those core subjects. And that's another really great freedom for families who have kids that I think most kids are not exactly on the same level in every subject.
So let's talk about the community aspect of this, because I think when people think of homeschooling, they think it's just one family all together and kind of going through this thing alone. Everyone's in the house, a little bit like the lockdowns, where everyone just staying home and going through stuff.
I know people thought the lockdowns were, oh, you're a homeschooler, you've already been doing this.
Yeah.
We aren't locked down.
Yeah.
I mean, we go to the library, we have friend dates, my kids are in sports.
Yeah.
We have a community day that we do 2 semesters of every year. They've done a homeschool gym class at the Y.
Yeah.
So it felt like a lockdown to us too.
Yeah.
There really there's been a real growth in homeschooling over the last few years in the United States. So there's a lot of people who are looking for social interaction.
Yeah.
And I think most of the homeschoolers that I know are very well socialized kids. They have, I think their families feel like when they're not gone all day, they can more easily participate in things in the evening because there's not pressure to go from one thing to the next.
Yeah.
So most of the kids we know take art classes, and they have a lot of extra interests outside of just their academics.
Yeah.
And they have a little more time for it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of opportunities.
So let's talk about the idea of a homeschool co-op. We'll hear that a lot. What is a homeschool co-op? How does it work? What's that like?
It's a group of homeschool families that meet together. So there are 2 main types. One type would be just a strictly social group, where maybe somebody plans field trips. There's in almost every county you're going to find a group like that, where you're not going for a particular class, but you're doing field trips or dances. I mean, they're usually really active, which is great. And then the other aspect is an academic co-op. So a lot of counties have an academic co-op where there's a group of 20 or so families that know each other, and they say, well, nobody wants to teach algebra. Well, any of these parents or any of you qualified to teach algebra. And so they work together, and those classes aren't offered exact ones every year, but usually they'll make sure the ones that are needed are offered. The biggest co-op in Ohio, with 144 groups, is Classical Conversations. So buying into that is everybody on that one day that they meet are all doing the same curriculum. Yeah. And they're tutors that lead those classes and assist parents in helping their child complete the work through the week. So you
touched on something there that is going to hit a little bit close for home for folks, and a little bit maybe hurt a little pride. But it is something I know folks worry about with homeschooling, which is, say I've got a high school kid, and they are in algebra, or they're in trigonometry, or they're in chemistry, which, Lord help me, I don't want to ever see another chemistry book again. Yeah. And I've got to now teach my 10th, 11th grader chemistry. How do you navigate that? How do families deal with that? Is it expected that the parent is going to have to become a algebra or chemistry, a rocket scientist or something like that? I'm even embarrassing myself.
No, actually, that's a question that I get all the time from people, and they're like, I don't know if I can do it. Yeah. One of the great things I think parents find out is that we want to model for our children a lifetime of learning. And so it's great to come alongside your child, but it's unrealistic to think that all of us are going to complete it with our children, because we're doing laundry and managing a home and working and all these other things. But there are a ton of great resources. There are a ton of videos online. A lot of high school curriculums actually come with access to online videos where you can, especially with math, that's the one people are always worried about. You can get on and watch somebody else walk through it. Libraries have a lot of those too, underused resource. And once you get to probably like 4th or 5th grade, most of the books will be geared toward the child. They're not gearing them toward the parents to explain everything. They're written in such a way for the child to be able to follow along. There's usually a lot of great example problems. Yep. So it's usually that's like one of their number one fears. Yeah. But getting into it, you realize there's a whole bunch of resources. Another great resource are other homeschool parents who've been through it, because they probably know the best videos, the best websites, someone that helped their child with it. They've had a little experience. So that isn't something, we live in the information age. There's a lot of resources. For sure. So let's talk about the idea of a homeschool community. The homeschool community is very tight-knit. Mm-hmm. How do families get connected with that? If I'm someplace off in Trumbull County, or I'm up in Wood County, something like that, and I don't know anybody in my neighborhood, or here in Franklin County, I don't know anybody in my neighborhood that is homeschooling. How do I get connected to those other people around me that might be looking at this? Yeah, a great way is to, most everybody's on Facebook, but Ohio Homeschooling Parents, If you search and find their Facebook group and go to files, they have a list of all of the homeschool co-ops per county.
Yeah.
So if you don't know anybody, that's a way to find out. Is there a meetup group? A lot of them will have beginning of the year events.
Yeah.
So you can show up and they'll have a cookout or something, get to know people. That's a great way. And also joining that group, you can just post a question. And a lot of people have worked through things with their kids that struggled with math, or maybe a kid who struggles with motivation to get things done during the day. If you post a question on one of those sites, you're going to have a lot of responses from people who are really willing to help and offer advice and point you in the right direction. So that's a great way. And also the website, OhioHomeschoolingParents.com, has resources on there as well.
That's great. And we'll post both of those resources with this video so families can go
It's a great way to get connected
and access that. Then two last questions here for you, Kate Andres. One, what's the cost? If I'm thinking about getting into homeschooling, for these books, this curriculum, the online access, those types of things, how many computers do I need, tablets, do I need to buy all that kind of stuff? What's the cost for, on an annual basis for homeschooling?
Well, I mean, like a lot of things, there's a wide range, maybe even more so than some of the other options. It's totally possible to homeschool for free. There's one group, and I hate the name, but it's called Easy Peasy, which makes it sound like it's for kindergartners. But it's totally free access to classes online all the way through high school, offers tons of electives. It's very reputable and well reviewed. So you could do that and get books out from the library. So no one should be concerned that they can't do it. You can buy kits is another great way when you're getting started with a different curriculum to buy a kit. Or to do it with a co-op, so that's included in your cost. But a lot of people probably spend $300 to $400 for the year.
Yeah, that's not bad.
So it's not bad. I always tell people if they're going to look at a kit, buy the basic one. It has your four core classes, because the rest of it you can kind of add on as you go. But you can see kits that are $1,200. Most of the time that's not what people really need. It's more than what they need to do that. But co-ops, a meetup co-op might only be $25 for the year, and then you just pay for the events you want to go to. Classical Conversations is about $350 per kid, and that's for 2 semesters for the younger kids. So I mean, there's a broad range, but there are a lot of great resources that are not expensive for parents. And also there's homeschoolingfoundation.org offers scholarships, and they offer grants and scholarships. For single parents, for people who have lost a job, which we know people are in that position. So it's a great place to apply, and they send you a check and you just send back like receipts that these are the books that I bought or whatever. So I know people who've gotten those. So there are a lot of resources out there.
So last question here, Kate. So if I'm a parent and I'm thinking, I want to try this, where should they start? Where do they go? What's the first step to heading down this road? And you've given some good websites already on this.
Yeah, I think definitely getting connected with a homeschool community is one of the most important ways to be successful, just because it is a new territory. And although it's not complicated, it's new, and there are a lot of nuanced things that people run into. But definitely I would say that was number one, getting connected with the community, even if it's online, just an online community. 2, parents do need to notify the school, and that's a really important thing. Your notification has to be into the superintendent's office within 5 days of your district's start date. Otherwise, you'll be dealing with truancy issues. They're on that same website that I mentioned, Ohio Homeschooling Parents. The form is on there, and if parents fill it out entirely, it can't be denied. But you do have to have it in. So your superintendent will send a letter saying, hey, we know your child's not going to be at school. That's really important. And parents too, at the end of the year, either need to have their child do a test or keep a portfolio. So keep some beginning work of math and writing, and some from the end of the year that has to be turned into the school district over the summer.
That's great. Well, and so that's a really important point right there. If you want to homeschool, you need to notify your local public school, let them know there's a process to go through. And I think it's also important to say that you are allowed, they can't deny you that ability to.
Not if it's filled out.
Yeah, not if the form's filled out, all the boxes are checked off. And I think the last thing too, that just we really want to drive home that I hear you talking about is that the homeschool community is really a community.
It really is.
And I've never met a homeschool family that was not excited to hear about somebody else in their neighborhood that was thinking about home educating. Is that right?
It's so true. I think especially when you've gone through something maybe with a particular child. You know, a lot of homeschool children are, you know, gifted, and a lot of them have struggles, and I think people are really nervous if their child doesn't fall right in the middle of the road, but there's all kinds of families that homeschool, and so you want to glean as much as you can from someone, and they're usually very open and ready to share. So.
Well, Kate, Andre, thank you so much for the time, and thanks for all you do with your family.